Hello everyone, and thank you all for tuning in yet again to this episode of Tales by the Fire. Last episode, we read the third chapter of Marked by Darkhawk 14, and we learned some information about the mysterious bodyguard hired to protect the main character. At least, that's what we thought he was hired to do. We know now that he was actually hired to escort our main character to her own execution in the far-off kingdom of Kokaba. Will Calla find out this truth before it's too late? Or perhaps will Dante have a change of heart? Or will this story end up being a tragedy? Maybe some of these questions will be answered in this episode of Tales by the Fire. Chapter 4: A Different Life. As a bit of sun filtered in through the thick curtains of my room, I finally got out of bed. Doubtless my father wouldn't be happy with my slacking, but it wasn't exactly easy to leave the warm comfort of a soft bed. I glanced out the window, pushing the heavy cloth aside. Another day of rain. It made me think of Calla. I was looking forward to seeing her and telling her about my recent visit to Princess Vanessa of Cinnaba. I had reluctantly been away from the castle for the past few days, but seeing Vanessa definitely made it worth it. "Prince Gossamer!" came a rough voice from outside the door. "Yes, William?" I asked, recognizing the voice of my longtime faithful servant. At first glance, William wasn't exactly what you'd call a looker. He had a rough beard and weathered skin which hung on his thin frame like an oversized coat. However, he was a truly kind man, and had taken care of me ever since I was only a child. "Your archery practice has been cancelled for the day, my prince," said William apologetically. No matter, I reassured him. "I need to spend some time with my sister today. I haven't seen her in a while." "Of course, your majesty," said William. Aside from myself, mother, father, and Calla, only a few others knew that Calla was my sister. "I shall arrange it that the other servants stay out of that hall for today." "Thank you, William," I said, then dismissed him. I dressed quickly, throwing on some of my older clothes. The linen was a bit worn, and I knew that I would have been disposed of them soon. I left my room and headed down the halls, nodding to the servants who bowed respectfully as I passed. The castle was strangely busy, or perhaps it only seemed that way after seeing so much of the smaller castle in Cinnaba, yet it held a charm that even the grand castle of Arak couldn't muster. I strode down the familiar path to the dank hallway that my sister was imprisoned in. At one time, William had asked me why I didn't simply forget about her instead of worrying about her every single day. Yet I would never forget my sister. Even if I wanted to, the limp she had inflicted upon me was an appreciated reminder, despite the pain it caused. I rapped tightly on the door, hoping not to startle my sister. "Calla! Calla, it's me! Calla?" I called again, surprised she didn't answer immediately. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys, then unlocked the door, fearing the worst. Instead of the gruesome scene I was expecting, I found nothing. The tiny excuse for a cot she used was gone, as well as the putrid bucket that filled the room with an awful stench. The room had been completely clean. Perhaps Father had finally listened to my demands and got her a room of her own. I strode through the halls, then nearly ran into Nikolai, the chief war advisor to my father. He brushed past me with a murmured apology. The quirky man was one of the few others who knew Calla's true identity. Nikolai? Come here, please, I said. The tall, red-haired man approached me with an open smile. I always found it hard to trust a man with a permanent smile, but Nikolai never gave me a reason to doubt him. "Where's Kala?" I asked quietly. Nikolai said nothing for a moment, but seemed agitated. He gestured silently with his hands, which always made me irritated. "Tell me, Nikolai," I said again. "I do not know, Your Majesty," he said simply. "What do you mean?" I asked, ice pouring through my veins. A strange worry permeated the very air and even afflicted me, a type of worry that I had never experienced before in my 16 years of life. "She was sent off by your father after you left for Cinnaba. His Majesty the King would only tell me he was sending her off to get a cure. I believe he is sending her to Kokaba." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Nikolai. Tell me, why are you so agitated?" I asked, placing a hand on the slightly older man's shoulder and looking into his green eyes, trying to calm him. I felt heat surge through my veins as I focused, allowing the power of my mark to do its work. In seconds, I noticed that Nikolai had relaxed and was glad to see the success of my marks. "I do not doubt His Majesty, but I worry for the princess. She only had a single bodyguard and little to no supplies. The man with her was hardly older than yourself, my lord," he answered quietly. I frowned. "I'm sure father has his reasons, but I will ride after them. I'm sure Kala could use some more supplies. Thank you, Nikolai," I said as I walked away. Immediately I summoned William and had him prepare some supplies. I told father that I was simply leaving early to visit Princess Vanessa again. He didn't seem to doubt it. After only a few minutes, Nikolai came to see me off. "Have a safe journey, my prince. Please, see that the princess gets these," he said, handing me a few sets of women's clothing. I was quite sure that Nikolai had bought them with his own earnings. He had always had a soft spot for Kala. Perhaps in his eyes, like my own, her mercy and kindness had overshadowed her cursed mark. That infernal tattoo that turned her into a creature so unlike herself. With a word of thanks to Nikolai, I took the clothing and stored them along with the food and supplies I had prepared for my sister. I bid farewell to Nikolai and went to the stables, my head swimming with worry for Callista. I hoped that she was faring well, and that her bodyguard was kind to her. If not, I would be certain to take his life. Just in case, I grabbed the curved sword that my father had given me for my 16th birthday, as well as a quiver of neatly fletched arrows. I readied my horse, Fyodor, and rode off toward Kokaba. Fyodor's rapid hoofsteps brought hope to my heart. I prayed to Varrock that I would reach Kala before she got too far away. I hoped that in Kokaba she could find a cure from that cruel monster that had plagued her all her life. That was Chapter 4 of Marked. It was written by Darkhawk14 and posted on fictionpress.net. Thank you all for listening, and as usual, if you want to hear more, simply like, favorite, and subscribe. And I hope to see you all next week on Tales by the Fire.